I adjusted the rearview mirror and caught my own eyes, shadowed with the last 5 years' wait. It was the day I had both dreaded and longed for, the finalization of my divorce. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I parked outside the courthouse, my heart thumping erratically in my chest. I hadn't seen my ex-husband since the day I left our shared home, the home where I once thought we'd grow old together. The morning was bleak, an overcast sky mirroring the turmoil inside me. I stepped out into the chill that wasn't just from the breeze but also from the anticipation of facing him again. I had chosen a quaint little coffee shop just around the corner from the courthouse, hoping to calm my nerves with a strong latte before the proceedings. The warm, inviting aroma of freshly ground coffee beans enveloped me as I entered, a stark contrast to the coldness I felt inside. I found a secluded table near the window, my eyes inadvertently catching sight of couples sharing tender moments, their laughter a distant echo of my past happiness. It was here, amid the soft murmur of conversations and the clinking of coffee cups, that I first noticed him, the barista with a gentle smile and eyes that seemed to hold stories of their own. As he approached my table, our eyes met, and I felt a flicker of something unfamiliar stir within me. It was a simple exchange, him asking what I'd like and me ordering my usual, but there was an unspoken understanding, a shared moment of connection in his glance. As I returned to the coffee shop over the following weeks, our brief interactions became the small oases in my days filled with legal battles and lonely evenings. I learned his name was Tom, and he had a way of making each customer feel seen, but with me, it felt deeper. Each time I visited, he'd remember my order, and soon enough, he started making small variations to it, just to see me smile, he'd say. We started talking more about books, music, and our favorite movies, discovering shared interests and mutual acquaintances. One rainy afternoon, as I watched droplets race down the window, he sat down across from me on his break. "You look like you could use some company," he said, his voice a calm, comforting presence. We talked for what seemed like hours, the rain outside a soft symphony to our conversation. I found myself sharing more than I had intended about my divorce, my fears, and my hopes for the future. Tom listened, really listened, and when I finished, he simply said, "It sounds like you're rediscovering yourself." And that's beautiful, isn't it? His words, simple yet profound, stayed with me, echoing in my mind long after our conversation had ended. I stood there, on the faded deck of the old seaside cafe, the rays of the setting sun casting long shadows on the wooden floor. The scent of salt and seaweed mixed with the aroma of roasted coffee beans was intoxicating. I clutched my cup a little tighter, the warmth seeping into my palms. He was looking at me with those deep, thoughtful eyes, waiting for me to respond. "I think you're right," I finally admitted, letting my guard down. "I am rediscovering myself, or perhaps discovering parts of me I never realized existed." He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's the adventure, isn't it? Finding out who you really are under all the layers life has piled on." I nodded, lost for a moment in the thought of peeling back those layers. "It's terrifying and exciting all at once," I confessed. The breeze picked up, playing with a strand of my hair, and he reached out, tucking it gently behind my ear. His touch lingered just a second longer than necessary, sending a shiver down my spine. "Do you want to explore more?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper as the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving us in the soft glow of twilight. "Yes," I breathed out, unsure if I was talking about the self-discovery or the budding something between us. I found myself walking beside him along the shoreline, the waves lapping gently at our feet. I had kicked off my shoes, and the wet sand felt cool beneath my toes. The moon was a bright crescent in the sky, casting a silvery light over everything. "I used to come here as a child," I told him, my voice blending with the rhythmic sound of the sea. "My parents would bring me and I'd spend hours collecting shells and building sandcastles. It felt like a different world." He listened intently, his gaze never leaving my face. "And now, coming back here, how does it feel?" he asked. "Different," I said, pausing to pick up a smooth, rounded shell. "It's as if I'm seeing it through completely new eyes. There's nostalgia, yes, but there's also this new layer of freedom, I guess. He took the shell from my hand, examining it under the moonlight. Freedom is good, he said, handing it back to me. It means you're not chained to the past, but you can appreciate it from where you stand now. I slipped the shell into my pocket, a small but significant token. I'm glad you're here with me, I confessed, feeling my cheeks warm under his gaze. So am I, he replied softly, our hands brushing against each other as we walked. Later, we sat at the edge of a small wooden pier, our feet dangling over the water. I felt enveloped in a blanket of stars, the sky a tapestry of twinkling lights. He had brought a small, old radio, and soft music floated around us, a gentle acoustic melody that seemed to resonate with the night's magic. I haven't been this at peace in a long time, I admitted, leaning my head on his shoulder. The warmth from his body was comforting, a stark contrast to the cool night air. I can tell, he responded, his voice low and soothing. You seem more yourself than when I first saw you back at the cafe weeks ago. I chuckled. I was quite a mess, wasn't I? We all are, at times, he said, turning to look at me. It's not about avoiding the mess, but about who sticks around to help you clean it up, or better yet, who makes the mess bearable. I looked up at him, struck by his words. And you? Why do you stick around? I asked, my heart beating a little faster. Because, he paused, searching for the right words, because I think your mess and my mess might just fit together perfectly. I laughed, a genuine, heartfelt sound that echoed into the stillness of the night. And as I sat there, under the vast sky, beside someone who saw my mess not as a burden but as a counterpart to his own, I felt a profound sense of belonging. I turned my head to look at him, the moonlight casting his features in a soft glow that made my heart skip a beat. I've never felt this understood, I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper, fearing that any louder might shatter the delicate moment. He smiled, that slow, knowing smile that seemed to pull at every frayed thread of my soul. I guess we're both walking mazes, aren't we? But perhaps together, we can find a way out. I nodded, feeling the weight of years of loneliness begin to lift off my shoulders. I reached out, my hand trembling slightly, and found his. His fingers intertwined with mine, firm and reassuring. I'd like that, I murmured, allowing myself to imagine a future where I wasn't alone in my struggles. The night air was cool, and a gentle breeze whispered through the trees, rustling the leaves and playing with my hair. I leaned into him slightly, seeking warmth in his presence. He didn't hesitate to wrap his arm around me, pulling me closer into his side. I rested my head against his shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. I awoke the next morning with a start, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar light streaming in through the window. My mind raced as I tried to remember where I was, and then the events of last night washed over me, bringing a gentle smile to my lips. I rolled over, half expecting to find him there beside me, but the other side of the bed was empty. A twinge of disappointment pricked at my heart, but it was quickly soothed by a note left on the pillow. Gone to make us breakfast. I hope pancakes are fine, it read, his handwriting sloping and easy. I stretched, feeling a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the morning sun. I padded into the kitchen, my feet cold against the wooden floor, and found him at the stove, flipping pancakes with a concentration that made me chuckle. I thought you might have left, I said, leaning against the doorway, watching him. He glanced over his shoulder, a lopsided grin spreading across his face. I promised pancakes, didn't I? I'm not a man to break my promises. I walked over, wrapping my arms around him from behind, resting my cheek against his back. I'm glad, I murmured, feeling the hum of his laughter through his body. Later that day, we found ourselves walking through the city park, our steps in sync as we navigated through the bustling paths filled with other weekend revelers. I watched children chasing each other around, their laughter filling the air, a sound so pure and untroubled. He squeezed my hand, bringing my attention back to him. What are you thinking? He asked, his voice warm with curiosity. I hesitated, my usual walls threatening to rise, but I pushed them down. I was just thinking about how normal this feels, I admitted, meeting his gaze. Being with you, it doesn't feel like I'm trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. He stopped walking, pulling me to a halt with him, and cupped my face with his hands. I know exactly what you mean, he said, his eyes searching mine. With you, I feel like I'm finally where I'm supposed to be. I leaned into his touch, closing my eyes to savor his words. When I opened them again, his face was nearer, and I felt his breath mingle with mine. I raised myself on my tiptoe, anticipation tingling through me, and then, finally, our lips met. As I kissed him, I knew I was kissing not just him but also goodbye to the lonely echoes of my past. I lingered in the kiss, feeling the warmth of his lips melding against mine. I breathed him in, the scent of rain on his jacket mingling with the faint trace of his cologne, a juxtaposition of nature and man that somehow suited him perfectly. My hands, tentative at first, found courage as they slid up his strong arms, tracing the line of his muscles through his shirt. I felt his hands at my back, pulling me closer, as if he wanted no space between us, no air that wasn't shared in our breath. "Is this okay?" he murmured against my lips, his voice a husky whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "Yes," I whispered back, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. I couldn't believe I was here, in this moment, with him. Every lonely night I had spent curled up on my couch, wondering if I would ever feel this kind of connection again, seemed to dissolve into the cool evening air around us. I stepped back slightly, just enough to look into his eyes. I saw the stars reflected in them, and I felt as if I was falling into vast, uncharted depths. His gaze held a question, one that I knew my eyes must be mirroring. Were we really ready to leap into whatever this was? Was I ready to trust someone again after everything that had brought me here? "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice trembling not just from the chill in the air but from the vulnerability of my confession. "I am too," he said, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face. His touch was gentle, reassuring. "But I also know that I don't want to say goodnight to you. Not yet. Not if I don't have to." I smiled, feeling a warmth blossom inside me, chasing away the cold. "Then don't," I said. "Stay with me a little longer." We walked hand in hand back to my apartment, the city lights casting long shadows on the pavement. I felt each step threading our lives a little closer, each shared smile weaving a new strand in the tapestry of US. Inside my apartment, I turned on the lamp, casting a soft glow over the room. I led him to the couch and we sat down, still holding hands, neither of us ready to let go. I could feel the weight of his gaze on me as I looked around the room, at the bookshelves filled with my history, the photos on the walls that told my stories. "Do you want to hear a secret?" I asked, turning to face him. "Always," he said, his voice eager, as if my words were gifts he couldn't wait to unwrap. I used to imagine someone sitting with me, here on this couch, someone who would listen to my stories, share my silences. I imagined someone who would fit into the empty spaces of my life. "And now?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. "And now," I began, taking a deep breath, "I think maybe I was imagining you." He leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. "I'm here," he whispered. "For as long as you want me." I felt the last walls around my heart crumble, not in a painful crash, but dissolving gently into the warmth between us. Here, in this softly lit room, with the night whispering through the open window, I felt my past loosen its grip. I was no longer just I was we, and that realization was the sweetest connection of all. I could feel the weight of his gaze as heavy as the evening air, thick with unspoken words and lingering hopes. I took a deep breath, the scent of rain and the leather of the couch mingling in my nostrils, grounding me. I wanted to say so much, to unravel the yarn of my thoughts and let him see the tangles and knots of my heart. I remember, I started, my voice barely a whisper, the first time we met. It was raining then too. My fingers traced the lines of his palm, feeling the lifelines that had brought him back to me. He squeezed my hand gently, encouraging me to continue. I was lost in the storm, literally and metaphorically, and there you were, an unexpected shelter. My chuckle was nervous, fluttering like the leaves against the window. "You were my storm," he said softly, "and my calm. I've wandered since, farther than I should have dared, but every path somehow led me back to you." Our eyes locked, and I saw the reflection of my own fears and hopes shimmering in his gaze. It felt like a promise, fragile but true, stretched between the silence of our proximity. I leaned closer, the distance between us charged with the electricity of a storm yet to break. My heart hammered against my ribs, a desperate Morse code conveying my need for him. "Stay," I whispered, the word hanging between us like the last leaf clinging to a branch in autumn. "Not because I'm afraid to be alone, but because I'm more me when I'm with you." He moved, a slow and deliberate motion, erasing the scant inches that had separated us. His breath was warm against my cheek, and I closed my eyes, savoring the closeness. "Then I'll stay," he murmured, "and we'll be us rather than you and me." His lips pressed against mine, soft and tentative at first, then deepening as if he were writing a covenant not just on my lips but onto my heart. The kiss was a language, fluent in the dialect of long-lost lovers finding their way back. I responded with every fiber of my being, pouring into that kiss all the words I couldn't speak, all the nights I woke up reaching for him in my sleep. I woke up to the first light of dawn sneaking through my curtains, its rays like fingers sifting through my hair. He was there beside me, an arm thrown over my waist, his breathing deep and even. I watched him sleep, tracing the contours of his face with my eyes, memorizing the way the morning light danced across his skin. I knew challenges lay ahead. I knew there would be storms, maybe fiercer than any before. But as I lay there, his warmth seeping into my bones, I felt a quiet confidence settle in my soul. I was no longer navigating my storms alone. We were tethered, bound by something stronger than the fears that had once kept us apart. I got up quietly, not wanting to disturb his slumber. I made coffee, the rich aroma filling the small kitchen. I filled 2 cups, mine a little stronger, just the way I liked it. I glanced back at him, still sleeping, a faint smile curving his lips. I smiled too, realizing that this, right here, was my new beginning. A beginning where every I could finally be turned into we, where my fears could meet their endings and my hopes could start singing their first notes of dawn.